All right, so everyone had created their Azure account in our last session. So what we are going to do over here today is to go ahead and create a few servers. The first server that we would create is going to be an infrastructure as a service, and then we're going to look at a platform as a service. So once you log in, you'll be able to see a screen that is similar to this. It's going to list all the services, popular services, or anything that you might have um, used in past, or click through the website and it would show you your recent searches or things along those lines. So over here on the left hand side top, when you click on the icon, it's going to give you the list of services, a brief services, a popular services. So now when we click on all services, you'll be able to see a list, a very big list of all the services that Microsoft Azure provides. As you can see, there are hundreds and hundreds of services that they provide, but the one that we are interested in is the compute service because we want to create a server. So that's a compute service. But there are several different categories that you can choose to, and then you can play around with that a bit later. So over here, what we are going to do is create a virtual machine. But as you can see, there are other kind of compute services like app services, like container instances, or virtual machine scale set. So what does the virtual machine scale set means is if there is a too much workload on a one server, it will create another server and distribute the workload between the two servers, and it does that automatically. But for the demonstration of this class, we are going to do the virtual machine only. So we will click on virtual machine, and then you'll be able to see this kind of a screen. So what do we want to do is create a virtual machine. So we would click on this and create Azure virtual machine. uh, Once you click on it, it should redirect you to creating a virtual machine. So over here, what you are saying is, what subscription would you like to use? We're going to use the free subscription that Microsoft had provided us. So I'm going to keep it as Azure subscription 1, and then a resource group. A resource group is it helps you to organize different resources together. So let's say if you had a virtual machine just for an app server, and then you would have another virtual machine for a database server, you can group them together because they are going to be um, working together and used for the same or similar use cases. The resource groups also helps you to understand the billing side of things. Let's say the resource, you have 10 different clients, and for each client you have individual resource group. That way it will allow you to see what resources are consuming. Like let's say a client ABC uses $1,000 in resources per month, but there is this other client that uses $100. So you can charge your clients accordingly. Also, there are other benefits of resource groups, such as from your organizational standpoint of things, like, okay, you have a production environment, you have a test environment, and such and so forth. So over here, we're going to create a new resource group. Let's click on create and give it a name of test IaaS. Um, so that's test infrastructure as a service. We'll click on OK, and that's fine. So now over here, the next thing you will see is a virtual machine name. Which region do we want to host this um, server? And then the region, there are several different regions. As you can see, they have their data centers across the world. So let's go with the first virtual machine. Let's try to put your first name followed by server, and that's going to be your first uh, virtual cloud server that you'll deploy. For the region, we are going to select a US Central the reason we are selecting the US Central is we don't have a US Central over here. So let's go ahead and we'll create a US East 2. And then what is the availability zone option do we want to do? No infrastructure redundancy required. We're going to select that because this is our test system. But if you had a scenario where you want to have a physical copy of the server, because in our previous class one of the person mentioned that what if one of the data centers that we have hosted our server goes down. This is the option that allows you to make sure that you have it replicated, you have your server completely backed up into a different region. We're going to say no infrastructure redundancy required at this moment, but if you wanted to choose otherwise, you can. Security type standard, you can have several different security type. We're going to leave it at standard at this moment. And then for image, we're going to select a different image because we want to create a Windows server. Now over here you will be able to see that we have several different types of server. You can click on select all images and it will give you the list of all the images. And we're going to wait for a second for it to load up. Okay, there you go. So it gives you all the different operating systems that are available and that are pre-configured. So let's say we want to create a Windows server, and then we want to say, okay, what plans do we have? And it depends on the other stuff. So you can click around and play with it and to see what's actually out there. So we go back to create server, we click on this and we would select a Windows Server 2019 data center. We can select 2022 version, but let's say go with the 2019 version at this moment. So we will click on this and then it will do all the configurations that is required. But let's say if we want to do a custom configuration, then we can click on configure VM and we can VM generation, and then we can select which generation do we want to use, VM architecture, what kind of processor do we want to use. Do we want to use 64 or ARM processor? At this point with Windows we have only 64 version available. Now as we are scrolling down we get we get other options like what is the size of the server that you want to select. So over here as you can see they are showing us few sizes, but we would click on select all sizes, and from there you would be able to see several different type of server sizes. You have a dedicated, you have H series, F series, E series, but those series means different things and they could be used for several different use cases. But for the demonstration of uh, of, uh, our class, we're going to select B2MS. If you wanted to have a dedicated server, you can select any D series server, but we're going to stick with B2MS right now. If needed, we can go into the details of what are the different types of servers and which do we need. So as we can go along, there are other information fields that is needed. So over here you can see administrator account. So we're gonna make sure if you have some other whatever username you give and password you give, will need that to log into the server. So over here I'm gonna select as end-to-end admin, and then I'm gonna give it a password. Okay, so it needs, there are some requirements over here. It needs a 12 character long password and stuff like that. So I'm gonna say and to and bang 234 dollar and to and bang 234 dollar. and two and back to $3, $4. So make sure you remember your username and password. And then as we go down, what ports do we want to allow? We would say RDP and HTTP port, as we're going to be hosting our website there. And then we would go onto the disks. What's the disk size and what the disk type do we want to have? So over here, as you can see, there are several different options for disks. OS disk type, we're going to say standard HDD hard drive. We don't need a faster uh, disk at this moment. So we're going to say standard HDD, but there is an option for premium SSD that are much faster for read and write operation. Standard SSD is again a little bit faster than a regular hard drive, but we're going to stick with the standard hard drive at this moment. It's a magnetic disk, so it takes a little bit to read and write, to perform a read and write operation. So as we go along, key management. So all your data, uh, all your data is encrypted, and if someone steals the server, physical server, they won't be able to access any of the data that's on there because everything is encrypted. So with key management, how do we want to manage the key? We're going to say platform manage, so Microsoft takes care of that rather than we trying to manage it. So that's everything. Let's go to the networking side, because when you have a server, you need the networking infrastructure. Over here, it provides you all pre-filled infrastructure, virtual network. It's going to create a virtual network. It's going to create a subnet, and it's going to assign a public IP to the virtual machine that we are creating. And then network security group, what kind of security group configurations do we want? We're going to keep it basic. We're going to allow public inbound and outbound traffic, and we select which ports do we allow, as we did it on our first screen. We would choose if there is a load balancer or application gateway added. Those are added for traffic monitoring or traffic dividing, or uh, um, we can use application gateway to protect any attack against our server, like DDoS attack. So if we go next into the management, we would see several different things. Enable basic plan for free, yes. Like Windows Defender, we want a basic free plan. If you wanted to have other configurations that we wanted to add, like login through Azure AD, we don't have that at this moment, so we are not going to do that. Enable system assigned managed identities. Like if your services, your different Azure services are talking together, then we can do that. Enable backing up site recovery in an event if a virtual machine fails in an eastern region. We might if we have enabled backing up or did a site recovery, then we can recover that site in a western region with a minimal to no loss of data. So those are the configurations that we can see over here. We will click on next monitoring. Over here, we're gonna have the default one enabled with managed storage account. So if there are any diagnoses like a server fail, if there are any errors in the server, then it will generate a log file and we would be able to access that. We can create alerts, like if a virtual machine is down for, let's say, 10-15 minutes, it sends out an email and a text message. Those are the configurations that we can do with alerts, enabling alerts and then configuring those alerts. But at this moment, it's out of our scope. We go into the advanced. If there are any scripts that you want to run during the initial boot of the server, or if there are any other regular tasks that you want to perform, so this section would be used for that, for our, again, for our purposes, we're gonna keep going to the tags. This is very, very important one. So tags allows you, again, like we did with the resource group, it allows us to do mapping and do certain things. So some of the tags that we like in our company is first of all, which agency is this for? So we would say agency is end to end, or you can put your own name, um, and then created by, I would say Andy Patel, and then okay, what's the purpose of this? It's a test system, or we can say Tech Academy, and then we would select the environment of the server, env, we would say test system, and that's it. So you can add your tags, you can create certain policies that says you need to have certain tags in this. You can technically skip this, but it will allow you to do much better analysis on your billing side of things. So here is agency, created by, purpose, and environment. We'll click on next, and it will give us an entire thing to review. Hey, this is how much it's going to cost. These are the configurations that you have selected. If there are any changes that we would like to make, then we can do it right now before we click on the create button here. But before we do that, it's just taking a few seconds to go ahead and make sure everything is configured. So over here, as you can see, everything is the test passed, so we can click on create. Let's make sure we scroll down through this and see all the configurations that we did are correct. We did the hard drive, local redundant storage, no redundancy required. We selected we changed the size to B2MS. Initially it was B1. So that's everything over here. Now we're gonna click on create, and it will take few minutes to go ahead and create the server. So once we have created the server, we're gonna try to log into the system and configure that for our need. We're gonna install an IaaS, Internet services, IIS, Internet Information Services, I believe that's what it's called. And then we would host our first website. So I'm gonna pause this video for a second, and we'll continue once a complete deployment is done. Okay, so as you can see, our resource is created, and we can go to our resource group, and it's going to list out all the resources that we have. Here is the Andy server that we created. Now what I'm going to do over here is let's go back to let's go to the resource group, and in the resource group you see several different things that are created, and that is exactly what are the things you would need. So you have the virtual machine. That's what initially we plan to create. We got a public IP address to which we would be able to reach and reach our website. Then you have a network security group on which you put the rules who can or which ports could be connected and from where it could be connected. And then we have a network interface. So the network interface allows the server to communicate to the network. And then we have a disk. That's a disk you need to um, have storage. And then we have the virtual network. So virtual network is connected to the network interface, is connected to the virtual machine. So now what we're going to do is we are going to do a connection to the server. I hope you remember your username and password, and we're going to use that to connect to the server. So I want you to go to RDP on your Surface Book, and you can click on that, and then you would put an IP address over here, and then you will click on connect. So as you click on connect, it's going to try to make a connection request to our server, and it's going to ask for a username and password. So we're going to click on more choices and use a different account. And then we would what we would do over here is put the server name slash the username. So we're going to say nd server followed by n2 and admin, and then we're going to enter the password. And then click on OK, and it's going to make ask you that do you want to verify this, and we're going to say yes, and it's going to connect you to the server. All right, so here is what you'll see. Okay, this is not exactly okay. So we are getting connected to the server at this point, and we're gonna do certain configurations that allows us to host a website. This might take a few seconds to get connected up, as it is the first time we are getting connected to the server. So there we go. That's our server, and it doesn't do anything at this point. It's just a piece of stuff. It is a computer hosted in Azure infrastructure. So we're gonna install an information service, Internet Information Service, IaaS, and that IaaS is gonna allow us to use uh, our website on the server. So let's go ahead and say add role and feature. You'll see the server manager, and we're going to say add role and feature. Okay, the server is collecting the inventory of data. The visual art will available after the data collection is finished. So it's starting up, so it's taking a few seconds to load up the server and do everything on the background. So I believe it should be done by now. Okay, there we go. So we should click on that, click on next, click on next, and then you're gonna say this is the server, click on next, and what do we want to enable over here? As you can see, we have an entire list of things that we can enable, but we are interested in web server IaaS. And then we're gonna say add a feature and click on next, and it does all the auto configuration. We are not gonna change anything on this, and we're gonna say okay, click on next, click on next. Here are the basic configuration. We are not going to make any changes to this, but let's go ahead and keep clicking on next and then install. So it's going to take a few seconds to go ahead and go through the installation process of web IaaS, a web server. And then once we are done with the installation of that, we would be able to host our first website. Okay, so we have gone through the installation process of IaaS web server, and then we're gonna click on close, and we should be able to see our IaaS server. So what we're gonna do is go into the files, and from there we'll go into this PC, C drive, and then you will see an inet pub, and we would go into www.root. In www.root, we're going to create a new folder, test website, and we're gonna add a new file, text document. At this point, we're gonna say index.html, Uh, let's double click on it, and then I'm going to write a little bit of an HTML code. Some of you might have seen this. Nothing too usual. Nothing unusual about HTML over here. That's what I meant to say. So we got the body tag, HTML tag, and then we're gonna say h1 slash h1, and then I'm gonna have Tech Academy uh, week 2. So that's what we have. I'm going to click on file, save as, and that as the previous file was saved as a text, I'm going to save this as HTML, and it's saved. You see 2 files over here. Now we're going to open up the IaaS, and that should give us an internet information service. Uh, over here we're gonna create an default site. So let's remove, and then we're gonna say add a website. What's the site name? We're gonna say test app, test website. Let's say test website. We're gonna choose the path at where the site is saved. So we're gonna say C drive, inetpub, root, and test website. Click on OK, and that's it. We're gonna click on OK. And now on the right side over here, you see browse option. That will take you to the website, but we want to see if we can connect to the website from internet. So I'm gonna copy this IP address, open up a new tab, and then paste it over here, and I should be able to see our website. Cool. So that is so good. Now that's your first deployment of a web server. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you like the video, please go ahead and click on the subscribe button.